All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. Politi, Fonseca, Lanny here. And on your screen, we now have the technology to do a podcast that people can watch. Why on earth anyone would want to do that? I still do not know. But we are now on YouTube. If you want to watch us live talking about Rutgers sports, you can see that Fonseca is wearing a Star Ledger hat, which is something that you probably can buy on eBay for like $4.99. Lanny has a guitar behind him. Do you actually play the guitar? This is something I did not know.
I actually do.
Really? Huh. Okay.
And I have next episode.
Yeah. And I have a bookcase full of free books that people have sent me over the year that I haven't read. All right. That's our background. That's where we're at. Thanks for joining us. It's been a good summer. A couple of programming notes here before we get started. We're going to do 2 episodes this week. We're going to do 1 episode that's focused on Pat Hobbs, the AD search, and that entire situation. And because we are acutely aware that many of you rather just skip forward and talk football, we're going to do an entire episode on the football season, on Howard, on predictions, all that good stuff. Here, I'll flip a coin to see which one we do first. How you guys feel about that? Ready?
Tails.
Yeah, let's just do the football one first. What do you think? How about that? Let's do football.
Let's go.
Okay, let's go. How you guys doing? I haven't seen you all summer. It's been weird. I've missed you.
We missed you too, Steve. How was Maine? How was Paris? How was the world outside of New Jersey?
The world outside of New Jersey is great, thank you. Yes, if anything else, Paris got me out of having to stand there and pretend I'm watching football practice during the summer, which was nice. That was good. And Maine the same as well. So I can just parachute in for the Howard game and pretend that I know what's going on, which I really don't. So this podcast is going to be informative for me as well, guys. So please keep that in mind when you ask difficult questions here. The one thing I have noticed from Paris, which is fascinating to me, 2 things, which is fascinating about this football season, is that it seems like there's a narrative out there where there are a lot of people who all of a sudden are waking up and going, hey, Rutgers, right? Hey, Rutgers. Rutgers could be the team that crashes. It seems like every week someone was saying Rutgers is going to be the team that crashes the 12-team playoff, that Rutgers is going to be the surprise team, the dark horse. All that happened, and then the AP poll comes out, and not one of you, Fonseca, not one of your colleagues was like, you know what? I'm going to give Rutgers that 1 vote. Like, it's kind of weird. It's like, you got a bunch of pundits saying this team's going to be great, and then you got all these voters saying, we don't see it.
You can't be a dark horse if you're in the AP top 25, Steve. So I think people are trying to...
Hey, 1 vote?
Not 1 vote. That was surprising to me. Like, I thought that Rutgers and Virginia Tech were both going to be on the cusp of the top 25. Virginia Tech was. They were 27th. Rutgers didn't even sniff a vote. I didn't vote for them because I really didn't think they were close, and I didn't want to be the one guy that voted for them and looked like a homer either. I was surprised that not one person threw out a flyer, right? But I think that Rutgers has an opportunity within the first month of the season, if they beat Howard and Akron like we expect them to, and they beat Virginia Tech, which if they are undefeated going into that game is 100% going to be ranked, then you have a chance to break through. I think people around the country, maybe the national guys like Kirk Herbstreit and the Big Ten analysts know about Rutgers. Maybe guys in Texas and Arkansas don't necessarily know about Rutgers. I think they still have a little bit to show to get into the poll. But I agree. 1 vote, maybe 2 votes would have probably been warranted maybe later in the season.
Pat, were you surprised?
I was a little bit to see that Virginia Tech got as many votes as it did.
Right, yeah.
After Rutgers pummeled them last year a little bit in the 4th quarter. So to see that disparity was a little shocking to me, but not surprised. Generally, Rutgers average, I did this morning, 45th across 6 different polls. I think that's pretty fair. I think they finished last season around in the 50s. So I think it's about just win and move up. That's how you want to do these polls.
Right. It's clear that people are going to take a wait and see approach to this team, which is fine. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think, if you look at what that season was like last year, I don't think it's interesting because here in New Jersey, I get the sense that bringing in the quarterback, we'll talk about a lot to your trip to his hometown, Brian, which was it's just a fascinating story on Ethan Kalimakis, but bringing him in seems to have answered the question about the quarterback here in New Jersey, but it has not answered that question nationally. And it's funny, there was a moment, I don't know if you guys watched the game day this week, but there's a moment they're talking about Minnesota's football program, their team this year, and the analysis was, well, they're just a quarterback away. And like, well, wait a minute. That's our guy now. That's the guy who doesn't want fruit in his pizza, man. That's and it's just interesting to see that analysis. I guess nationally, that has not been a question that has been answered with him, which is kind of telling.
Yeah, I think if you read all of the quarterback rankings, that's another part of the preseason ranking industrial complex, which in fairness to the AP poll, myself included, a lot of us voted Florida State as a top 10 team, and then they go to Dublin and get their butts kicked by Georgia Tech. So these things aren't exactly scientific. But most people have Ethan Kaliakmanis near the bottom of the Big Ten and near the bottom of the Power Five as far as starting quarterbacks. He just did not have a good year last year. There are factors that explain that. He's on his third OC in 3 years. The OC had never called plays before. A lot of chaos in his career there. So I understand the rationale. I think the reason why Rutgers probably feels optimistic is that he's reunited with Kirk Shiraka, who recruited him out of high school and really, really liked him as a sophomore, really saw a lot of him out of him when he was young. And he was the one that unlocked the best play he had at Minnesota. So I think that's why there would be some optimism. And the reason the outside is not as optimistic probably is because A, they didn't pay much attention. They just looked at the numbers, and the numbers last year were not great. Completion percentage was low. Passing offense struggled a lot. I think if you look into a little deeper, I don't think Ethan Kaliakmanis is a top half quarterback in the Big Ten. I really don't think he's shown that. I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the Big Ten. And that's what Rutgers needs him to be. Not the worst quarterback in the Big Ten, good enough to be middle of the pack and let Kyle Monangai and the defense kind of do the rest.
Yeah, Pat, going back through talking to people just to get their sense of what practice was like and what summer was like. This to me, there's a lot of optimism, it seems, about the offense. More optimism than I can remember in a decade.
Absolutely.
And starts with him too. And I think it is that upgrade that the short passing game, the fact that he is much better on his feet than people have thought. And you put in him as a piece to what you already think you have. You know you have an elite running back. You think you have the best offensive line that you've had at Rutgers in years. I mean, there's reasons to be optimistic.
I completely agree with everything you said. And the other thing, they have some guys that can catch the ball this year and a lot of guys that can catch the ball. I think the receiver position is so vastly improved. And I think you're going to see that play out early in these first two games against Howard and Akron. I don't think they're going to hold things back. I think they're going to want to get Ethan comfortable, get these guys going. So I think there's optimism. Like you said, those position groups, obviously it's a run first offense still, no question about it. But I think, everything's full steam ahead and looking good.
Is it wrong of me that I'm still taking a wait and see approach to that position group? And that's the one. I guess I feel like we've had this conversation. Well, the receivers have to be better. They have to be better. I get it that they feel like they have the pieces now, but I kind of want to see it.
That's fair. I think me and Brian have been watching it for a couple months, and we saw it all spring as well. And the guy we didn't see in the spring, Daimir Miller, a lot, but we've seen it in the summer, and he looks really good. So I think that's going to be a big upgrade, and more so than just like the three starters, whomever they may be. I think there's like 5-6 guys. I think it's just deeper than it's ever been, and that's how you kind of develop this pipeline and reputation of a passing offense to have some consistency, starting with the quarterback, obviously. So yeah, maybe slightly better.
All right,
slightly better is the phrase of the summer in the passing game.
Slightly better. It's the phrase. This the story of my life. It's a motto. I can hang it on a sign behind me. All right, we know the running backs are good, Brian, and I guess Kyle Monangai obviously coming back for this season to showcase himself. I've heard good things about Sam Brown. That's going to be, it may be a situation where Kyle Monangai doesn't have to run the ball as much as he did last year. That they can rely on someone. I mean, you say this, and it's Greg Schiano. I think back to the Ray Rice days when he had Brian Leonard back there, and Ray still carried it 40 times a game. I get all that, but it seems like that is really a position of strength that this team has.
Yeah, Kyle Monangai is the best player on the Rutgers offense, I think, very clearly, and they're going to need him to be that star again. He was a big reason why they had most of their offensive production last year, along with Gavin Wimsatt's legs. So I don't know if you could expect him to lead the Big Ten in rushing again, and I'm not quite sure you expect him to even break the 1,000-yard mark again. But I think what he can do is be a tough guy to tackle, get those tough yards, and the most important thing is in the fourth quarter when you're wearing teams down and you need to either protect the lead and keep the ball and keep churning first downs, or you need to create something. You got to hope that he's able to do that to the same level he did last year. And Sam Brown, he's now a year removed from the foot injury that kind of took him out his freshman year, and I think it's fair to say held him back a lot last year. I think he's healthier than he was last year, and I think that if you can get him back to what he was in that Indiana game, another strong running back who's tough to take down, then Rutgers has a really good 1-2 punch, where I still think Monungai is very clearly going to be the lead there. But when you got a guy like Sam Brown who can kind of spell him for a bit, and you don't really see that much of a drop-off, that's when your rushing attack, which again is going to be the focal point of this offense. I expect them to run the ball the majority of the time the way they did last year. When you have that, then really that helps Ethan Kaliakmanis take some load off his plate, and that just helps the offense elevate a level above where it was last year, which again, it wasn't great last year. I think this year they could even go beyond competent. Maybe they can be good. That would be a huge step forward for Rutgers, I'd say.
All right, before we transition to defense, let's talk about Ethan and your trip out to his hometown. And my main takeaway, and this is something it's fresh in my mind because of the Olympics, where like we claim people as New Jersey natives based on, like Noah Lyles' parents went to Seton Hall. So he became, he's a Jersey guy, right? But and I'm reading your story about Ethan, and like his parents are from Old Bridge. He's like, they own a pizzeria. I think we can claim him. He's pretty much a Jersey guy, right? I mean, that was my one big takeaway, was that this guy, he's got family in Jersey. Take me through that. He is no transplant.
No, he has Jersey roots that are deep. Like you said, both his parents are from Old Bridge. They went to the same high school, but they're a couple years apart. They met and started dating at Bar A, which is just absolutely completely Jersey. When he told me that story,
absolutely.
When he told me that story, I could not believe it. I thought he was making it up. I swear to God. He wrestled at Seton Hall, right? And you talk to him like he was a very nice man. I really enjoyed spending time with him and getting to know him. But you feel a bit of just Jersey about him, I feel like if I say the wrong thing at the wrong time, I might be, potentially in a little bit of danger if I'm in the wrong situation. Like he's got that little aura of, I don't want to say Tony Soprano because that's a little stereotypical, but just kind of like a tough guy. I won't hurt you, but I could if I need to, kind of thing, which again is very, very Jersey. And yeah, they grew up in Antioch, Illinois. They spent their whole life there. Alex, his father Alex and his mom Colleen moved out there in the late 90s. But they come back to Jersey very regularly. They still have a ton of family here in the area. They'd go to visit their grandma in Hazlitt and stop by Giuseppe's Pizzeria, and they have really fond memories of that. Ethan smiled when I asked them about it. And now they're Midwestern guys, but their parents find an empty building in town. They buy it, they open a pizzeria, and they don't serve one slice of deep dish. There's not one slice of deep dish in that place. It's
God
pure
bless them.
Jersey pizza, just quintessential Jersey. And people might be wondering, I figure I should disclaim this, why I was in Antioch, Illinois in May. In a completely bizarre coincidence that will never happen in my life again. I started dating a girl from Antioch, Illinois last year, and Rutgers gets a quarterback from her hometown, transfers in after we started dating, and I went over there to meet her parents and all that stuff while Ethan Kaliakmanis was there. It was all kind of a beautiful mishmash of things working out together, and it came out in that story. So I don't usually believe in that whole small world thing, but when things like this happen, I kind of, maybe that saying is true.
Pat,
so
sure
you didn't meet at Bar A? You didn't meet at Bar A?
What?
You didn't meet your girlfriend at Bar A is what I'm asking.
I did not meet my girlfriend on Bar A. No, I did not.
I'm sure, Pat, you have the same question I do as well. It's like, I want to hear more about the story and the pizzeria and all the good stuff you learned about Ethan, but I really want to know how the visit with your girlfriend's parents went as well. I'm like,
this is the perfect first episode to put our faces on, because you already said that Ethan's dad can kick our ass, so that's great. Yeah. Now he knows who we are. That's great.
Good to know.
And now your girlfriend's family just they're all about it, right? Yeah. So this is great. Tell the whole story. Good
impression. I mean, how did you do?
I think this is a conversation for another podcast. I think we can kind of focus on football. We don't want to bore the Rutgers fans. I thought I did great. Of course you did.
And now we have a special guest. I'm kidding. We don't have a special guest. That'd be great. We could just bring in your girlfriend's mom to see how you really did.
One day.
This is awesome.
That's good.
I hope these guys are loving it as much as I am. This is great.
I love it. Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to that. Rutgers plays Illinois this year, so maybe that's another opportunity to bring that up. All right. The other thing I learned about, and I did the stuff in your story that I did not know. I didn't know that Ethan was a track star of some level. I don't know if that's too big of a word, but an excellent track athlete. long jumper, correct? Am I getting this correct? And that's, for all the talk about, I get it. People are worried about they're replacing the best rushing quarterback in Rutgers history, but he's no slouch athletically.
No, he's a great athlete. He proved that on track and field. He was a state champion in the long jump. He was a county champion in the 110-meter hurdles. And he was an athlete in a bunch of different sports. Probably could have played baseball if he really pursued it. Was the starting center for his team's basketball team. He was a sports journalist in high school, fellas. How about that? That was my favorite.
That's great.
That was great. That was great.
Yes.
If he really wanted to pursue that track, he could have been taking our jobs at the Ledger. Thankfully, he didn't. So yeah, just a very versatile guy, very athletic. And if you watch his high school tape, like his coach told me that they were a strictly option team before he showed up. And then when he showed up, they became a football team that sometimes runs the option because they can, because of his athleticism. So he's got the arm. That's what Kirk Straka loved about him immediately, just the way the ball goes off his arm and the way he can thread the ball between two defenders. Like that really stuck out to Kirk Straka in their first workout. And the athleticism. His coach told me about twice he hurled a defender in high school, which is illegal, but he didn't get yelled at when he got back to the huddle because the coach was just so amazed at how high he jumped over the defender. And in this huge game, their senior year, he makes this athletic play. He dodges a sack. He throws the ball as he's falling down, kind of Patrick Mahomes style, game-winning 2-point conversion. And then he gets the interception on the other end to seal the win. So, yeah, he's a great athlete, along with being a better passer than Gavin Wipset will be. I don't think the drop-off with his rushing, with his athleticism, will be that big if there even is a drop-off.
Right. And ultimately not that important if there is a drop-off. I mean, can he hit like an 8 yards? Are they gonna be able to throw the ball to the middle without all of us going, that's right. That's kind of where we're at. That's the quarterback situation. The upgrade can be marginal and still be huge, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
No doubt. That's the biggest thing. If he can complete a pass 5 yards and he doesn't gain a single rushing yard all season, I'd still think it's a step forward. No doubt.
Right. Okay. Well, again, great story. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend Brian's trip to Antioch, Illinois, and we'll get more information on that, Pat. This is a year-long mission about
that's great.
To visit Antioch, Illinois.
Yeah, we're reporters at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes you have to, build up to it. You don't want to hit people with the hard questions right away. We'll get more out of this. Okay. All right. The bad news out of camp, terrible news. I mean, I kind of felt sick to my stomach for the kid. Not a kid. Motorhead's been around forever. Losing him to an injury, that's really rough. It's going to affect this defense in a lot of different ways. Give me your sense of finding out about that and what that means to, otherwise a great camp to have this kind of devastating news come out.
It was a tough blow and a tough day in the press world, like on the sidelines, kind of like Schiano told us the news, which was he always tells us a season-ending injury. That's his thing. I respect that. And we're appreciative, obviously. But there was just a whole dark cloud hanging over the whole practice that day. It was just, like you said, a gut punch in a lot of ways. But yeah, and just remember, this is the second ACL tear of his career. He missed all of 2022 as well. So just double the hurt. So very tough for the defense. He was obviously such a versatile player that made a huge leap playing outside linebacker last year, full transition. This was supposed to be his full year, right? Like he knows the position well, gets on the NFL draft radar, and so absolutely devastating. What it means for the defense long term, Rutgers likes its depth at the position. So there are guys like Moses Walker who will step up. Dariel Jabome is a name that's been popular, and Timmy Heinspeeder, a guy from Don Bosco who is a former walk-on, has been having a nice camp as well. So Rutgers likes the guys as the replacements, but it's a tough guy to replace. There's no question about it.
Right. Yeah. Third down blitz packages, just stability back there. I think of some of the plays he made last year, and the fact that this is my next question: is Tyreen Powell ready to go? You'd be without your two top linebackers, and I get it. You don't really need them for Howard or Akron, Dayton,
Akron.
I was going to get something in Ohio. You don't need it for whatever Mac Kent State team they're playing here from the middle of the country in week 2, but you're going to need them for in a month. Is he ready?
He's easing back. Right. we won't be able to reveal any of that information or
it's one
really
of those things, right?
one of those kind of deals. I think Rutgers is playing it very tight to the vest, and they want to keep every competitive advantage that Coach Schiano has in his pocket.
Brian, is linebacker the deepest position in the defense at this point?
I would say so. I do think that losing Mohamed Touré lowers the ceiling for the defense because last 3 seasons he's played, he led them in sacks, and this is a team that's really struggled to get to the quarterback for the past decade, pretty much. I wrote this morning, they have not surpassed 23 sacks in a season since 2014 when they had 33, and they've just really struggled to any pressure they create to get to the quarterback. And Motoré was their best pass rusher. Even if he was at linebacker, you touched on it, Steve, his versatility allowed him to be a third down rusher or to even these, disguised packages, making blitz out of the linebacker spot. I think that lowers the ceiling, but I think the floor is high. The guys that, Pat mentioned, Tyree Powell has a chance to be the best, if not one of the best, the best linebacker in the Big Ten. And I think the guys below him provide a solid floor. But again, I just think losing Mohamed Touré, especially before the season, before he even gets a chance to play, just kind of lowers how good this defense could be. And you got to hope that the defensive line, guys like Aaron Lewis and Wesley Bailey, can elevate and help provide some, cover for losing Touré. We'll see.
Right. And I could say this, like my expectations for the offense are, okay, be better. My expectations for the defense couldn't be higher. And I really believe that. I saw it last year. I think we all saw it last year, that this has got to be a very good defense. If this team's going to exceed or meet his expectations, it's got to be one of the best Big Ten defenses. Do you think it is? I mean, obviously we know we love Joe Harasimiak. We love what they've done. This is a Schiano kind of style defense. It was attacking. It finally, it was not overmatched against the best Big Ten teams last year.
That's the point. Yeah. Think back to that Ohio State game and how they brought it physically against Michigan as well. The top teams later in the season, when the depth became an issue, you saw that defense kind of wear down Iowa, Penn State, for example. But it should be a pretty good defense. I mean, it ranked top 20 nationally in yards allowed and points allowed last year. So the statistics are great. My question is, with Touré's absence, how aggressive will Harasimiak be calling plays? How often can they dial up the blitzes? Do they have the guys to dial it up? So that's my question mark. And like Brian said, it's going to be on the front four to really get some pressure because it hasn't been there historically. And last season was an issue as well. Greg Schiano's even said it himself.
All right.
I think the thing with this defense is they bring back a lot of guys from last year, which is good because they had a really good defense last year. I am not sure, especially with Touré out now, do they have a difference maker? Do they have a guy like Aaron Lewis on the edge? Can he be a guy that you need to stop, come off the edge, get to the quarterback, and make that big game-changing play? This is a defense that really keeps you in front of them, does not make any mistakes, and is hopeful for the offense to make the mistake for them. Does this defense have a guy who can get that big pick, who can get that sack, who can get that strip sack, who can force a fumble, who can make the game-changing play? I'm not sure it does. Obviously, there are guys that could improve significantly over the offseason, and maybe a guy like Wes Bailey, who's healthy now after struggling with injury last year. Can he be that guy? I'm not sure, but I think for Rutgers defense to take that next step, to go from good to great or from great to elite, wherever you want to kind of rank them from last year, I think they need somebody to emerge as that go-to guy. And I'm just not sure I've seen any of these guys do it yet, but that doesn't mean they can't.
Pat,
and lastly, real quick, Steve, real quick, one of the keys to the defense was how well the corners played in press coverage last season. Losing Max Melton to the draft as high as he went is going to be a big question for this defense. Like, how does Eric Rogers step up in that role, and how elite can Robert Longerbeam be as the top cornerback? Really important thing to watch.
Do you think the defense has that playmaker, Pat? If you had to pick one guy, who would it be?
Tyree Powell when he's healthy, for sure.
Yeah.
Right in the middle, that's what you want, your best player, captain of the defense. And the safeties, I think, are really good too. Shaquan Loyal's great. And Flip Dixon, I think, is one of the hardest hitters I've seen in a long time.
I was about to say that the back end safeties are guys we haven't talked about, and that seems like a position of experience and talent. So we're going to find out. All right, let's go some questions. We got some insider questions. We got a lot of questions on the Twitter. If you're not aware, if you're on Twitter, the Rutgers Rant has a Twitter account. wouldn't call it a very active Twitter account, but gosh darn it, we try. Maybe now that we have a YouTube video here, we'll be more active on Twitter. But so we got some good questions from people. Chris Edwards on Twitter wants to know, does it make sense to open the offense up the first 2 games, try and give Aiden confidence going into the post-bye schedule, or to ground and pound to set the tone for the season? Great question. Yeah, I mean, my first instinct is Greg Schiano's going to play the offense the way the offense is going to play, but I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing Nathan drop one back and see if he could fling it 80 yards. What do you think?
I think that history shows they'll probably play it pretty conservatively, not necessarily not show anything that's not necessary to give Virginia Tech an advantage. The big point here, though, that Aaron Brightman and Dave Anderson made on their podcast that I thought was very interesting. Rutgers plays Howard and Akron. Virginia Tech plays Vanderbilt before playing Rutgers. That's it. Vanderbilt is what it is, the worst team in the SEC. It's still a Power 5 team. Rutgers isn't going to get the feeling of playing comparable competition before playing Virginia Tech. That's their first real test. And last year, there was the inverse. Rutgers played Northwestern before playing Virginia Tech, and that obviously, I think, made a bit of a difference. With that being said, are they going to experiment, open the playbook to get a feel for what they have before playing Virginia Tech, or going blind and just kind of be vanilla? I tend to lean towards the latter. I think they'll really run the ball 60 times if they have to, get out of there with the win. Most importantly, avoid any injuries and don't put guys out there unnecessarily, and then kind of put it all out there on Virginia Tech, which I think is the most important game on the schedule. And I don't think you want to really put anything at risk by, throwing out a trick play against Howard when you're up 35-0.
I just think you lack when you don't establish your identity off the bat. I think it plays negatively in the long term. So I think Rutgers has to beat Rutgers right out of the gate. And despite who the opponent is, you gotta be yourself. So maybe they play a little conservatively, but I think it's great for the newcomers to get in, get acclimated, especially with the new quarterback. And the helmet communication is a big thing too. I think that's
wow, forgot all about that. Yeah,
to keep in the back of your mind too.
Yes,
10 or 15 seconds.
What was the big game where they had headset problems recently? Wasn't there one? Ohio State? I forget.
Maybe
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Good to revisit. All right, another question. Anthony, on the defense, similar to the offense question, does the injury to Toure with Powell still recovering, do we see the team change the way they play defensively? Do we see more nickel and dime personnel, or do they keep playing the same way but with young guys at linebacker? Another great question. I mean, I guess that also depends on who they're playing. If you got some spread teams out there, you're going to see a lot more of nickel and dime. But I mean, what do you think?
I think they'll run pretty much the same defense, just kind of subbing in a younger guy for Toure. I think it's too late in the year to kind of make wholesale changes. And I think that the personnel they have kind of fits the defense they run. And it's run to pretty good effect over the last couple of years. So I expect them to kind of stick with what they got.
Yeah. Pat, you agree?
I totally agree. And I think Rutgers has a couple good options at nickelback too. Bo Masco, Al-Shadi Salam has been pretty solid. So cornerback depth is sneaky good too.
Question from Jersey Juice. RU versus VT. What's more beneficial? You talked about this a little bit. Are you having a bye before the game, or VT being more battle tested versus an SEC team? Yes, I know it's Vandy. I'm taking the bye. I think a week of practice. Everyone's rested, healthy. Not to mention the fact you're going on the road. Again, a very tough place to play. I think I'd rather have that than facing anybody. But do you guys disagree?
Bye. I'm taking the bye.
Taking the bye.
For sure.
Yeah.
I agree. Extra rest, extra time to prepare. I think you take that for sure.
All right. Ben Weiss wants to know, is Harris Simiak the next head coach in waiting if we can keep him? Wow. We're retiring Schiano on this podcast here in week 1. I love that everyone's got to get a new job. Like, I've been asked this question, Schiano the next AD? I'm like, I don't think so, but yeah. I mean, So right now, Greg's got a contract through 2047. Like 6 presidents before we have to, think about this. But is if they can keep him, I mean, that's great. I mean, I think that's he would be the leader in the clubhouse.
That's a great suggestion. And when you think of head coach personalities, he checks every box. And I think when you can whether it's business, your personal business, small business, football business, when you can promote from within, is always more competitive than seeking outside hire.
Yeah. Look what Michigan did, right? Yeah. Right. I mean, Harbaugh leaves and they promote from within.
Well, let's see how that goes first. Let's not, crown the Wolverines just yet. And I think two things here. I don't think Greg Schiano's ready to retire. I think he is enjoying coaching this team and rebuilding the program. And I think he kind of wants to not make the same mistake twice, where he built Rutgers up to a certain level last time, went to the NFL. I'm not sure if he's going to build them up to we'll have our season predictions later, but an 8-4, 9-3 year, and then say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go be an administrator and Joe could be the head coach. I think it's going to take a few years for Schiano to retire. I don't think Harris Simiak is going to stay around forever and wait. Right? Rutgers is paying him handsomely. They're not paying him head coaching salaries, right? I think the more likely scenario is that Harris Simiak takes over, whether a smaller power 4 team or a high level mid-major team, is their head coach for 3, 4, 5 years, or however long it takes for Greg to decide it's time to hang up the cleats or hang up the whistle, whatever coaches hang up after their career's over. And then once that's gone, then Harris Simiak is kind of the presumed, next head coach. But one, there's nothing in his contract that says he's the next head coach in waiting, which is really the only thing tethering these guys. And two, the timing just doesn't really make sense to me. But I think if you could sign up for that in 5 years, Joe Harris Simiak being the head coach at Rutgers, I think that'd be a home run hire, because I agree with Pat. He's got, 30, 40-year head coach written all over him.
I can't handle another abrupt resignation. Enough of the abrupt resignations right now. Yeah. It's good. I can use this like a little Dave Letterman comedy here. So you know what I'm thinking. I think you're right about that. Let him go someplace else, be a head coach, and hopefully, if all goes well, Greg's your football coach for the next 6, 7, 8 years. Then you bring Joe back. All right, planning very far ahead. Let's go through these the rest of these questions here. Another one about the Virginia Tech game. Looking at last year's game, Rutgers took advantage of every mistake and seemed to wear them down by the fourth quarter. But they have a hell of a quarterback and it's dangerous if they get a quick start. I guess what your question is the Virginia Tech that we're seeing now appreciably better than the Virginia Tech we saw at the start of last season?
That's at least the public perception. Whatever you read about Virginia Tech, the magazines, the commentary is that the experience played out through the season, the quarterback development. Remember, Rutgers was his first game. He came in as the backup and got the start against Rutgers, and then he progressed and was played at a very high level. But the thing that I keep coming back to with Virginia Tech is the level of competition in the ACC is not the same as what Rutgers played last year. Would Gavin of Wimsatt have had just as good of a season in the ACC? Who knows? It's a tough comparison, but either way, Virginia Tech was better at the end of the season than it was at the beginning of the season, and that's fueling the hype around Virginia Tech. Similarly, the way it is around Rutgers right now.
I'll add a couple of things. One, not to bag on Gavin, but I think if he played, no matter where he plays, he still can't connect on 5-yard passes, and that's really the issue here. I'm not sure how much better of a quarterback he'd be in the ACC. I think Kyron Drones would be if Kyron Drones was on Rutgers' team last year, I think they beat a couple more teams. I think they have a chance against Ohio State. I think he's a really, really good quarterback.
He wasn't even that good against Rutgers, though. That's what I keep coming back to. Like, Rutgers' good defense totally exposed him. I know it was his first start, but I didn't walk away impressed. This guy is one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
I totally agree. I do think it being his first start was a big thing. And I think the other reason he had a really good end of the year, I'm going to list the opponents they beat last year. They won 6 of their last 9 games, or 5 of their last 9 games. This is who they beat. Pitt, Wake Forest, Syracuse, at Boston College, at Virginia, and in a bowl game, they beat a Tulane team whose head coach had left and all their good players were pretty much gone. Right. So it's like Rutgers beating Miami, but a worse team, a worse program with even less good players. So I think that's part of why some of the hype is with Virginia Tech, is because they beat all these teams. People see that they finished strong. They don't look at who they played. But I do think Kyron Drones might be the best player on the field when these teams play with each other. And when you have the better quarterback, I think that is going to make a big difference.
What's the line going to be on that game, if you had to guess right now?
Is it a night game or a noon game? We don't know that timing now.
Yeah.
Does it matter for the line? Hypothetical night game. It's going to be a night game.
If it's a night game, Virginia Tech minus 10.5.
Whoa!
What?
No
Yes.
way!
Can't
4.5.
lie.
4.5.
We're
What?
assuming they're both 2-0, right?
Yes,
Or
we're
3-0.
assuming that two. Yes,
2 or 3-0. Yeah, sure.
They're undefeated at
Yeah.
Lane Stadium.
10.5.
10.5.
No
10.5.
freaking way. No.
What do you guys
If
got?
it's over 3.5, 4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. 4.5. I have that. Yeah.
I think
Beat
you guys
them
are a
last
little,
year.
huh?
10.5. Man. All right, we'll come back to that. I'd be very surprised if it's in double digits. I'd be stunned. This is a tough word. I'd be surprised. A touchdown maybe, but 10.5. Whew.
Right.
All right.
Again, this is at night.
Give them the 3.5, right? So
If that's the fit.
it's a pick'em game. It's a pick'em game.
If it's at night, it's a 10.5. If it's
Oh my
if it's at noon, it's 7.5.
Have you ever even been to a Metallica concert, Fonseca?
I have
Do
never.
you even know Enter Sandman?
I don't know Enter Sandman, but everyone, I think people talk about Lane Stadium at night is like playing in Baton Rouge light. It's
Rutgers
like
played at the big house and
What's the
Beaver
record?
Stadium.
What's the record? What's
What
the
are you
record
talking
lately?
about?
This
Okay,
is
hold
not
on.
Michael Vick's not walking through that door, man. This is not 1998.
He's gonna put VT on that hat next bullet.
All I'm saying is this: Rutgers got 0 votes in the AP poll. Virginia Tech is going to be ranked when these teams play each other.
You just ripped the schedule apart, dude.
I don't think they're as good as people think they are, right? I didn't vote for them.
This is good.
I'm just saying gambling is as much about public perception as it is about reality, right? Gamblers aren't doing high depth analysis. They're looking at the lines. They're going to see Rutgers 10.5 plus 10.5, and they're probably going to hammer the Scarlet Knights. And I think 10.5 is a fair line. I'm not a bookmaker. I think people are going to agree with me more than they agree with you, honestly.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put that poll out in the Twitter and we'll see what we come up with.
What's the over-under? 35.5?
The over-under on that, I think 40? 39.5? 40? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be. Yeah.
You know who also gets a ton of love in the national media is Bashal Tootin, Virginia Tech's running back. Paulsboro guy, South Jersey.
Oh.
Interesting storyline, right?
Interesting story. Virginia Tech, another one of those programs.
In North Jersey,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tutton, South Jersey. It's good.
Yeah.
This game is going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Except that Virginia Tech Blacksburg is like State College, only further away. That's the only problem with this. I'm trying to come up with ways I can get out of that.
Are you going to retire from
Retire
Blacksburg as well? Are you retired?
Oh, man, damn it! All right, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that issue later. I think I was all one. Here's one last question. Very good question. Important for Thursday night's game. Is the Howard Band traveling to SHI Stadium? They're amazing. Do we know the Howard Band coming? It is.
Yes.
It
Oh,
is.
maybe. Yes. So it's a road game. It's a road game for the Rutgers Band as well. That's great.
They will be positioned in the upper deck from what we were told. So
Okay.
for the season ticket holders up there, you're going to be rocking. That's
Do
all
they
I
get
know.
to perform?
I would assume, yeah.
You can't bring the Howard Band here and not let them on the field.
Right.
And that would be the travesty. Okay. Good news. Something to look forward to. All right. Okay. Good questions, everyone. Predictions. We got a lot of different predictions to make here. Fonseca, you put some things in the note file. Biggest game, most important player, Howard predictions, season predictions. Let's start with the biggest game. Since we're just talking about Virginia Tech, that seems like that's too easy to declare that as the biggest game. Probably is the biggest game. Certainly for the season to be exceed expectations, it's the biggest game. Let's come up with another game.
Yeah.
What do you think is the second biggest game on the schedule this year behind Virginia Tech? Pat, what do you got?
I'm going to throw what I think, what Rutgers Nation thinks is going to be USC at the Coliseum. But what I think is Wisconsin at home. If you think about this, Rutgers has never beat Wisconsin, has never really been competitive with Wisconsin. This could be the year, and you're at home, and it's right in the thick of the schedule. I think it's time for Rutgers to kind of prove that it can play with one of the blue bloods of the Big Ten, right? Maybe not the Big Ten East blue bloods, but I think Wisconsin's a really important just tradition, and being competitive and beating Wisconsin would be huge. So I'm going to go with Wisconsin.
It's a good one. What do you got?
I like it a lot. I'll take Wisconsin's bitter rival, Minnesota, for a lot of reasons. It's going to be the most juicy game of the year with all the storylines. Shiano versus Fleck, Kalik Manis against Minnesota, Shiraka against Fleck, and Heatherman against Rutgers, and all that great stuff. It's going to be just dripping with storylines. I think it's a team that Rutgers has to beat to kind of show that they're taking the next step in the Big Ten. Minnesota's right in that same range with them, with Illinois and Michigan State, Indiana, these middling teams in the Big Ten that are all fighting for position in that second tier or third tier, I guess. And its positioning in the schedule, it's right after that USC game, I believe. I just checked the schedule. Let me make sure I'm not botching this. But it's the first game it is right after USC, right after a bye, and it is the start of the final 4-game stretch versus Minnesota, at Illinois, at Maryland, versus Michigan State, where I think Rutgers has to win 3 of those 4 games to make this a special season. And I think if you kick that stretch off by beating Minnesota, then you're really cooking with gas. And I think I did the math. I'm going to have this in my game-by-game predictions later. If the way I see the season playing out does, that will be the game that locks a bowl game for Rutgers and kind of sets the floor for a season that, you have 6 wins already with 3 to go. You can get up to that 9-win range. And again, make this a season to remember.
Another good one. I guess I'm just assuming for this season to be a season to remember, they're going to have to beat Minnesota. It's one of those teams they have to beat. Illinois, Maryland, kind of the teams on that other side. I'm going to take Washington. So here's the team. Here's the team that was in. This is the team that was in the playoff. I mean, had a great year. People will remember that. They're not going to really look at they lost their head coach, their quarterback, pretty much their entire roster. They're not going to look at that as much as they're going to look at, hey, Rutgers beat Washington. It's just one of these scores that come across the bottom of the screen that will get national attention if they can pull up the upset. It's home. You're going to have a huge crowd, a night game. I mean, I don't know. It just seems like early in the year, again, especially, if they come off the win they beat Virginia Tech and they're going to come into that game, then it's just you want to see the bandwagon. It's going to be the people going to be falling off the back of the thing if that can happen. It's just such an opportunity. And even if they lose that game, they go down to Blacksburg, they come back with a loss, or they can turn the season around in 1 week. It's okay. We beat a Big Ten team. We beat someone who was in the playoff, a national respected program, the newcomer to the Big Ten. You're the one that slapped them. I think it probably handed them their first loss as a Big Ten team. I don't know. It just strikes me as a really big early season game. So that's the one I'm going to put as the biggest game of the year.
If they beat Virginia Tech, that game on a Friday night will be the best atmosphere I'd predict since I don't even know.
The Penn State or maybe the Penn State early, the first Penn State game there could be that level. Yeah.
It'll be one of the best environments they've had since being in the Big Ten, no doubt, because that place, like you said, is going to be just burning an inferno. People are going to be so fired up to finally have a big game, It'd
be a lot of fun. All right. Most important player. I think we should do the same thing with this and take the quarterback out. Clearly the most important player is Ethan. I don't know. Can you give me
it's the law and rule of football.
It's raw, but it's also what's happening here with this program, making the change to hope that they can get competency. The missing thing where it was last year, if Ethan is, we've talked about it. So who is the second most important player on this team?
You go first this time, Bri.
Okay, I'll go Dymere Miller. I think Rutgers has not had a number 1 wide receiver at a high level since Leonte Carroo. And I'm not sure Dymere Miller is going to be exactly as productive as Leonte Carroo, but they need him to be the guy. They need him to translate a lot of his FCS production to FBS and give Ethan Kalik-Manis a reliable weapon that can make big plays. Bo Melton was the closest thing they've had to that guy since. I think they need him to be better than Bo Melton and just be the guy. And that kind of elevates the entire wide receiver room with him. So I'll go Dymere Miller.
Pat?
I'm going to go with a sneaky off the radar pick and say Robert Longerbeam for the reason I said earlier that replacing Max Melton is the biggest question mark on defense. Longerbeam played great last year. Really good. So I'm really curious to see how he takes his next step like Melton did last year. And so I think the pass defense has to be one of the strength of this team. So I'm going to say longer beam and 1A Tyron Powell, obviously, for being captain.
There's a way to look at this question where you take the player you could at least afford to lose. I think that player's Holland Pierce, so I'm going to go with him.
Yeah.
And the idea that you have, I think people believe he's an NFL offensive lineman at a position that when Greg Schiano got here, he will tell you obviously was the weakness of the team. The idea that you would have some strength there. If you look at what happened when this program turned the corner the first time around, that offensive line, those guys on that line, I think didn't get as much credit as they deserve for turning Ray Rice into a player. We'll talk about this in a minute, who should be in the Rutgers Hall of Fame. Yeah, I just see that as such an important position, not only to protect Athan, but let's face it, if Kyle Monangai is going to be the Big Ten's leading rusher again, they cannot lose him. And I think the offensive line is going to be one of the sneaky strengths of this team this year. And it's going to be the difference between it being just a good season and a memorable season. So that's my answer to that one. All right. What do you want to do next? Howard prediction?
Yes. The line is 35.5.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right. It's about right. It's about right. Yeah. What do you think, Pat? Who you taking?
35.5 is big.
It's a big number. Yeah, it's a big number. I don't know if this is a lot. It's a lot of points for Rutgers to score.
Right.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna take Howard to cover that because
Okay.
I think it's just not way too many points, but I can't see Rutgers pressing the pedal to the metal in the fourth quarter against an inferior opponent. But Howard was also a league champ last year, respectable program. Juicy head coach Tyan, a University of South Florida guy that was on the staff for that great game in 2007 when USF was number 2. So I think Howard covers. Long story short, Howard covers.
What's the score?
35-7.
Good. Okay.
Rutgers covers. This is supposed to be a special season. You're supposed to have a better offense. And what better way to show your offense is better than to run up the score against an FCS team? I'll go Rutgers 49, Howard 3. Okay.
Give him Howard the field goal. Yeah, it's funny. I was going to go 42-7, and that's right on the. I think they were going to cut the 35. Damn you, Vegas. But I do think Rutgers will cover as well. So I will give them some field goal practice late in the game. Let's make it 44-7, a narrow cover. I don't think it's going to be the uncomfortable, some of those Wagner games where it's halftime and you're like, what are they going to do in the second half? Well, can we leave now? One of those games. I do agree with you. I looking at the results last year. Howard's pretty good, not great, but pretty good. So I think it's going to be exactly what you want out of that game, which is an easy victory, but one that's not embarrassing for everyone involved. So 44-7 for the Howard. Good chance for Pat to take a 1-game lead here on Howard. Woo! Early drama. All right, season predictions, though. I'm very curious to see which way you guys are going to go with this. Yeah, I mean, it's out there. You look at the schedule, and this is the first time that you can pick Rutgers to win 8 or 9 games and not be just a shameless optimist. Like, not just be a pandering fool, essentially, right? I mean, this is it. Like, there's no losses on this. There is no loss, no guaranteed loss in that schedule. It's amazing. So someone's got to go 11-1, right, Pat?
Why don't you start us off this time?
I get to start us off? All right, I will. I'm going to throw down the gauntlet. I think this is going to be that season. I do. And for me, that season is 9-3. I think they're going to win those early games. I think it's just the one thing I know about Rutgers is going to be they're going to win the games they're going to win a game you don't expect them to win, and they're going to lose one you think that they're going to have. So I haven't decided exactly which one that's going to be. If that's going to be like the womp game against a Maryland or someone in their middle of that schedule. But yeah, I mean, I am very bullish on this team. I think they're going to go down there. I think they're going to beat Virginia Tech. I don't think Virginia Tech is that good. I just don't agree with all that hype from these. I think there's too many voters in the ACC in these polls who are still clinging to what the last vestiges of relevancy for a dying conference. Okay, that's what I think is happening here, and they see the crumbling, the cracks in their very existence down there.
Florida State.
Florida State, exactly. I mean, like, what? This is Virginia Tech's not good. And I think they're going to come home, and it's going to be great, and they're going to get the win against Washington, and then it's off to the races, in a lot of ways. And I haven't figured out exactly. I don't think I'm kind of leaning toward picking them to lose that game at Southern Cal. They'll beat UCLA, and then there's just a couple of games in there, and I'm just kind of like, all right, so what is the factor of, you're riding high and you get Cincinnati is a way of putting it for the Scarlet Knights in 2006, losing that game. You have letdowns. I think there's going to be some of that, but overall, I think they're going to get through this 9-3, and we're going to be what's that? Sitting at the Music City Bowl on the holidays. That'd be nice. Wouldn't that be nice?
I'd sign up for that, no doubt.
All right. What do you got?
I got Rutgers going 8-4, precisely because they're going to lose that head-scratching game, and the game I had picked was Maryland. I think Maryland has their number, and I just think they're going to end up going there. I can't remember exactly what I had them at.
Who is Maryland's quarterback?
I have no idea. Okay. They lost to some guy. What was his name, like Schlossenberger or something? Some guy who I'm not even sure. Might have been a figment of my imagination.
Schlossenberger makes a good sandwich.
There's a New Jersey guy to claim on Maryland in the quarterback competition. Champ Long, Politi, get it out there.
Oh, is that right?
St. Peter's Prep, yeah.
St. Peter's Prep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think he's going to win the competition.
I don't think so either.
But that would be to lose to a guy named Champ Long would be quite the stab in the heart for Rutgers fans. I think they're going to lose to Maryland. I have them starting off 4-0, beating Virginia Tech, beating Washington, full of life going into Nebraska, and then 90,000 fans and a 5-star quarterback and all the glory of Nebraska returning kind of dampens the party. But 8-4, a good bowl game. I like that Music City Bowl, shout Politi. Citrus Bowl, maybe, who knows? These bowls kind of get watered down now that the top tier bowls are in the playoff and you got to fill in the spots below them. But I think Rutgers will be in a good bowl game. They're not going to be in Detroit on Christmas. They're not going to be at the Pinstripe Bowl. They'll be in a real actual bowl game where you travel and it's sunny outside and people are excited to be there.
It's exciting. It's so exciting. You can see me on the video. Shivers.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Okay. Pat, are you going to throw a bucket of water on this? You're going to be the negative one? Come on, this is a good opportunity for you to finally put on the black hat and piss people off. Do it. Do it. I'm kidding.
10?
You're not going to 10. You're not going to do this.
10?
No, you're not. No, you're not.
10?
That's it. I'm out.
No way. 10-2?
Wait, don't start. I don't have my headphones in. I can't hear you. Okay, go ahead. Explain.
Okay.
Do tell.
I think, Steve, you started it off perfectly. This is the season, right? You've been building for this, right? We went back to last year. We had the mile marker.
But 10 is the playoff, though, right?
We're blowing off the turnpike here. All right? We're going 95 on 95. All right? Listen, I think all these Big Ten games are going to be really tough. I talked about Wisconsin, Nebraska, USC. But I think when you got a guy like Kyle Monangai who can have that Ray Rice year, I think you just got to capture that magic and let it roll. So I think 10 is possible. And I'm sorry to be that fool's gold optimist, but I like it. I think they're so well coached. They're disciplined and tough. And I think like those newcomers in the Pac-12, I don't know if they're ready for like the physicality that Rutgers played with. They showed it last year, right? So I hear everything you're saying about Rutgers being Rutgers and the getting Cincinnati and Maryland. When it is
14-10 in the third quarter against Toledo, it is gonna be rough in week 2. That's gonna be tough.
Okay.
Let me just tell you.
I'm gonna clip it. We're on video now. We're done. I saw. Well, here's 10. Here's 10. 10-2.
Okay.
I like it.
Who are they gonna lose to?
USC, I
Mhm.
think Miller Moss is the real deal. I like that guy. And Nebraska, I think Brian's right. That there's some juice in that game. So I'll say those two. Two tough road games.
Gotcha. 10-2. Wow.
We all agree the over/under is set at 6.5 wins. We all agree Rutgers.
Yeah, I do. Yes, I was giving someone that bad gambling advice recently. Someone out of town, they said 6.5. I said hammer the over on that. I do believe that. Absolutely, it would be a bitter disappointment to be sitting there at 6-6, shuffling our asses off to Detroit, some guaranteed rate bowl. I mean, it would just be miserable. Can't have that happen. Totally agree. Got to be. I think for me, 7 is the baseline for okay. 8 is look. You haven't won 8 games, and I mean it's been a minute. So that to me is a successful season. Anything above 8 is put it in the books. That's how I feel about it.
Shiano's going to answer a big picture question today about what's next after making that mile marker claim, right? Like what's the next realistic mile marker, to use a cliche? It is to have a winning Big Ten record. Before you get to 10 wins, you got to have a winning Big Ten record. I think that's how he would answer it.
Interesting. I think he's not going to answer it. I'm worried about how it is. I think how he would answer it.
Right. You're so right. You've been around too long, Steve, because you're absolutely right.
Pat, I appreciate the question. Okay.
Historical reference here. Rutgers has had double-digit wins in 2 seasons in 170 years of football, or however long they've been playing. 1976 and 2006. It feels like we're 2 years away from the double-digit year based on how the math works out. But if they do get to double-digit wins, it would be the second best season in program history.
They only played 2 games in 1869. I mean, they can't get the double digits when you're only playing twice. Come on.
That's a fair point. Fair enough. I'm stumped. I have nothing to rebuttal with that. We can move on because you're right. You're 100% right.
Champions. Go national champions in the team college football playoff.
I thought going first. I'm like, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the optimist. But there was no stopping Pat from going 95 down that. I'm impressed.
How many times have we written this expert says this? Everyone's jumping on it.
You're that
How
expert.
can I not?
Everyone's fighting for the Keith Sargent Homer Memorial Award this year.
Exactly. Homer Memorial Award goes to. I thought I had it. I really did. I'm sitting in the audience like I'm at my acceptance speech, and Pat just barges in and
one swing game, Politi. 9-3, 10-2. I know it's huge difference, but it's not all that. It's not all that crazy.
I guess
if they go 10-2 when they have their parade down River Road, Pat needs to be at the front of the float and just kind of. I don't know, like a Rutgers Rant scarf or something. He deserves a spot on the parade.
Driving the bandwagon. I love it. All right, what else really quick? Women's soccer fight. Those are 3 words we have not had in order on our podcast script before. What happened?
So what happened was a video that would have gone viral on YouTube 15 years ago if this was the old days of the internet. Rutgers player Gia Gorman, she's a senior forward. She was tracking back on defense, clips a UMass player. They fall over. The UMass player tries to grab the ball from the Rutgers player's feet. She did not like it. They get up. There's a bit of we're on video now, so I can do this. There's a bit of a judo grabbing each other's shirt. And then Gia Gorman, the Rutgers player, throws the first punch. She comes out swinging like she's Mike Tyson. And it looks like she lands it too. And the girl gets knocked over. And then Gia Gorman gets on top of her, gets in position and starts wailing on her until they get separated. So we
don't be clear. Rutgers won the fight as a TKO.
We don't condone fighting, but she fought. She was the best fighter by far of the 2, and I would say yes. If this was a championship fight, she'd be walking off the field with the belt and her red card, no doubt. It was.
Was there a red card? She must have been kicked out.
Both girls were kicked out. Both girls that fought got kicked out. The winner of the fight and the loser. NCAA rules say that if you get caught in a fight, which is what this was dictated as in the official book, you get suspended for 2 games. Now, if you land the first punch and pretty squarely too, you might get another game or 2. I'm not sure what's going to happen. But Rutgers was going completely viral yesterday. I knew it was a story around the world when the Daily Mail in England called it shocking scenes of a wild brawl. And I thought, oh man, soccer has made it back in this country, baby.
We need to get her on this podcast. What are the chances that we can arrange? Gia Gorman's her name? She's been around. She's been around for years, right? Yeah.
She's a senior forward from South Jersey.
Right. Yeah. I know that. Okay. I'd like to talk to her about. Will she come on and talk to us about the fight? That'd be great.
I don't know. I wonder if she was impacted by the emotions of the turbulence within the athletic department. No leadership, and this you end up having a fight in the middle of a soccer field in Massachusetts on a Sunday afternoon.
This is for you, Pat Hobbs. Great. Oh man. Okay, that's good. Anything else to add, Pat?
Just that this is the end of our video career.
Our career, podcasting career. All right, Rutgers Hall of Fame induction. The McCourtys got in. A bunch of old timers also on that list. Ray Rice not on that list. I wrote a column saying he should be on that list. It's long overdue at this point, I think. And the response is funny. Rutgers is kind of like, I'll be the trial balloon for that. For the most part, the response to that column was, yeah, all right. I mean, there are some people outside the Rutgers community, predictably on Twitter, who were, nope, give me the big nope, or, kind of a couple of saucy emails about it. But for the most part, it was kind of like, yeah, I mean, I think people shrugged. So that's a good sign if you're on the Rutgers selection committee. I'm guessing that'll happen next year. I do not know that, but it just seems like they've been building up to it. McCourtys obviously are, well, I should have made this clearer, certainly well-deserving of that honor, represent Rutgers at the highest level for years, perhaps the best, champions of the Rutgers program belong in the Hall of Fame. So does Ray Rice. So we'll see if that happens next summer.
I believe in rehabilitation. I would have no problem if Ray Rice was inducted into the Rutgers Hall of Fame, because he is undoubtedly the greatest player in Rutgers football history, and that deserves accolades. That deserves a spot. I wonder if they would have to put a disclaimer of some sort on his plaque or in his bio acknowledging this, because I think it's the reality of what happened, right? I think, it's just, I don't think it's something that you can completely ignore. I understand your point about, him rehabilitating and doing talks and doing what he can to make up for the mistake. And I admire that. But I think if you're going to put him in the Hall of Fame, it's not something you can kind of just brush under the rug. I think you have to acknowledge that this was part of his story.
Of course. And you let him acknowledge it, which he's done every step of the way. And he talks about it openly and honestly, and that it wasn't going to be one punch, wasn't going to be what his legacy was. And he's tried to, to do that in a meaningful way. Difficult situation to be in. But he's handled it about as well as he could over 10 years now, too. 10 years.
Agreed. Completely agreed.
Anything else, fellas? What else we got? Teams are off to a fighting start for Scarlet Knights.
Yes. Women's soccer is the only sport that started. I believe men's soccer might have had a game and they won against somebody I can't remember, frankly. Okay. But yes, not a tremendous start for the Rutgers athletic department in the 2024-25 year, but I guess there's only nowhere to go but up.
I guess there are other things happening in the athletic department as well. So
good teaser for our next podcast, which we'll be back to talk about that. Obviously, a lot of questions about the future of the leadership and what it means, and some Pat Hobbs legacy. We've not really discussed. The man was AD for 8 years?
9. He was entering his 9th year.
Entering his 9th year. So obviously a lot there to talk about. And we will break that down in our next podcast. I don't know when. We'll just tease you with that. Until then, thanks for listening to this one. For Lanny, Fonseca, myself, YouTube, 10 Wins, signing off.